Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with our weekly Q&A content. It's a podcast. It's a YouTube video. You've already found it where you want to find
everything.
it. It's
to everybody.
We're all things to all people.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing to try to do. It has no drawbacks. Uncompromising, unflinching in our broad appeal. Who wouldn't wanna consume this content in whatever form it took, audio only or audio and visual, AV. So this is season 12, episode 7. Do you want to tell the fine people at home what they will be looking at with their eyes if they're watching the video?
Oh, yeah.
And what they're missing out on if they're only podcasting?
So this is becoming my favorite part. I mean, this is our 12th season?
Yeah.
And it's only the second season where we've had a theme to it. And I'm actually really enjoying this.
So the theme is your favorite part?
Well, I'm enjoying it a lot more now in a different way, only because it's something I haven't done. I'm sure if I was doing this from the very beginning, I would have gotten tired of it and trying to think up something. But I feel like it's kind of neat that we've been doing it this long, and I'm, getting energized again and getting jazzy about it because this is the season of old favorites.
It's like if you like pina coladas, right? That song?
Oh, that's Jimmy Buffett?
I don't know.
No, that's not Jimmy Buffett.
It's not. It's if you like pina colada. I can't sing it because I would sing it so perfectly that it would get copyright struck, and then we'd lose all the $1 of ad revenue for this video. But it's like that, right? You're falling back in love with
Oh, absolutely. Because for the longest time, I was forcing myself to do each of the Lost Challenge characters, which is a useful exercise. I learned a lot of things.
Yeah.
But falling back on some of our favorite teams, it's a little eye-opening. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I can bring with it a lot of the things I've learned from some of the other characters. Yeah. And you can see some of the changes.
I'm sure you know what the song is about, right? The lyrics of the song. It's a funny song. Coladas, what do you think the song is about?
I don't know.
Okay, so the reason why I was saying it, this is very funny. It's one of those songs, and this is it's a very popular thing to say. So many of our listeners might know, but you might not know. That song is about putting out an ad in the newspaper. A man puts out an ad in the newspaper to cheat on his wife.
Oh, is it cheat? How do you know it's cheating on his wife?
You do. So that's the information. It's if you like pina coladas and getting caught in the rain, it's all these lists of things that you might want to like.
Oh, it's like those romantic kind of ads you like walking on the beach.
Yeah, except it's specifically to cheat on his wife.
How do you know it's to cheat on his wife?
Because you look at the lyrics of the song and it says it in it. Oh, you know it because of the way that it is. But, and this is why I tied it in, is what ends up happening is that his wife shows up to the ad and he realizes that the woman that he fell in love with likes all the stuff that he likes, and that's why they fell in love with each other. And it's just gotten stale. They've let the time get away from them, and they no longer are engaging and stuff. They both like pina coladas. They both like getting caught in the rain. So they both try to cheat on each other, and they end up attempting to cheat on each other with each other, in a way that I think is becoming increasingly hard to do. I guess you could, if you were on Ashley Madison, you could both do it. But that's what the song is about. So when I was saying you're falling back in love, but you've got a renewed appreciation for it.
It's Rupert Holmes, which I would not have known. It's called, the song's name is actually Escape, and in brackets it's the Pina Colada song.
And if you look at the first two lines of it.
I was tired of my lady.
Yeah. We've been together too long. Yeah.
I did not realize that. Because you know what it's like? Mm-hmm. It's like Born in the USA, where you only hear the parts that are catchy, or maybe like the refrain or something, and you lose sight of, because apparently Born in the USA was sort of like a protest against the parts of...
Yeah. There's a lot of songs where people don't really get the entirety of it. Right. And there are some songs where the meaning fully flips. Right? Oh. And this one, I feel like people think it's more of just like a kind of beachy, balmy, flirty song, maybe.
What's hilarious is, I don't know why it came to me now, is I see those people who are complaining about Rage Against the Machine being like...
political in the wrong way, that they become part of the machine.
And then, no, that they're protesting stuff, and they're too woke, and
because they didn't...
that was their thing. They always were woke. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's funny.
Yeah.
It's all...
So I just, you let the moment pass too quickly that I felt like you didn't understand the reference that I was making. And you just kind of were like nodding along. You're, whatever you say. Yeah. And then you were so confused as to how I could know from the song in the first line I was tired of my lady.
I just never listened to the lyrics. Honestly, I just never did.
Yeah.
And you know what? There's a different style of listening to music. When you listen to music and you've got it on Spotify and you can listen to whatever, or you've got it on MP3s. Back in the old days, Like if you didn't have the tape, if you didn't have the album, and you were listening to most of the songs on the radio, then a lot of times I would miss the beginning.
You're like tuned out until the chorus, basically.
I don't even realize the song is playing because the guy's talking over the beginning of the intro. So a lot of times
that's a bad radio DJ, maybe. I think normally they're supposed to give you some sort of...
Or it just doesn't register. I'm listening to the song until I'm well into
And then you hit the chorus, and then you go, oh, I know this one, Okay. But for that song, it's the bump, 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 right? I feel like you maybe...
Yeah. I just... oh my gosh. Okay, sorry, so it's funny. So this is the Pina Colada. So
next week we can talk about a different song, maybe.
Okay.
I can think of something.
Luchador Bane. is the glass cannon. There was at one point he was like everybody's favorite. There was the nuclear loadout where before Necron Scythe there was Cloak of Destiny. That one gear would boost his stun damage. When he tagged in, there's a chance of stunning the opponent. He had the passive that boosted the stun damage. Cloak of tag in damage. So in the first little bit when he's tagged in, it's boosted the damage. He has a chance to stun. And then Cloak of Destiny gives you boosted stun damage. Then you give him power, maybe with one gear. And Tentu Totem was always better than Master's Death Cart because Master's Death Cart would break the stun. Tentu Totem would not. You could have League of Assassin's Knives for 50% splash damage in addition to boosted special 1 damage. Or an alternative would be Enchantress Companion Gear for essentially 30% boosted damage because you would have the skulls coming after in order to cover for his Luchador's weakness, which is 1-hit KO special, but any revives and any saves like Arkham Knight Batgirl, or even, I guess, the Batman Ninja for Batman Ninja Catwoman, you're sort of a sitting duck. You're really weak. You could have that. I mean, you could do both, but really, most of the time you need one gear for power. You could give it to him with Batgirl like we do in this team, but you want to get power back again because you're not going to want to do just the one hit. Although in the old days, one hit was often enough because that boosted special 1 damage could not only knock out the opponent in front of you, but then the teammates would tag in. The opponent's teammates would tag in with essentially no health left, like at most one health.
Yeah.
So what's neat is that it's still workable. So you're watching a few fights, and despite the revives that he's running into, and the fact that this splash damage strategy has one sort of fatal weakness, which is Brandish and Jado on a teammate, or an opponent's one of the opponent's teammates that can then come in with basically 3 bars of power.
Yeah.
It actually still works really well because with one revive, you do enough splash damage, except against Blackest Night Flash. The second you've got 2 bars of power coming in, right? The way we geared him and with Batgirl as a teammate, that we can do a second hit immediately. It means that there's just more splash damage against the first opponent, which is wild and great. And even though the second one is not stun boosted, it's still tag and boosted. So a lot of times you're doing enough damage to knock them out after they revive with their health.
Yeah.
It's a perfect antidote to opponent's Astral Harness because all you need to do is bide your time until the first vulnerability is gone. You tag back in and your special 1 is more than enough to bypass not only all the invulnerabilities, but also the extra health. Yeah. The potential extra health. 75% extra health. 75% chance of extra health. So it's still super spectacular, really fast fights, a lot of fun. You're bouncing in and out because it's Hawkgirl is still on the team. Batgirl now has Necron Scythe, so even if you face Arkham Knight Batgirl and she saves a teammate, knocks out your Luchador Bane, Batgirl Prime has enough offensive oomph that she can take out the rest of the team after Luchador Bane has basically reduced one Arkham Knight person to 1 health. I'm not sure if he does actually any splash damage if Arkham Knight Batgirl saving them, but it's enough that Batgirl can handle the rest of the team. I love this team.
So there we go.
Yeah.
And then one thing, I think we're going to talk about U.S. politics a little bit with Cameron's comment, and maybe we'll talk about that next with this.
Okay.
But Tim Walz was just announced to be the VP.
How do you pronounce his name? Is there a T missing? Like, is it like Waltz? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I don't know.
is T one of those things?
I think it's Tim Walz,
anglicizing,
sounds like Walz, but I don't know. But anyways, you said you didn't know too much about him yet.
I did not,
and I will say that I have seen a bunch of little things about him. I haven't seen a huge amount about his specific, platform. But obviously he's VP, right? So it's more, co-platform, right? But I have seen some stuff about his history. Apparently he was an ex-teacher at his school. He's the governor of Minnesota most recently.
Okay.
At his school in the 90s, he was like the teacher lead of like the GSA.
Gay Straight Alliance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard
and at the same time, he was also their football coach.
I heard that.
And he was a good coach. I'm seeing a lot of stuff that are not necessarily information in the strictest sense about how he's going to operate as a politician, but are all cues about the type of guy that he is.
So what I love about that story is this is the perfect example of an ally spending their social capital in support of their, is it friends, or just in support of the other people,
their community, right? Not necessarily their community demographically, but their community in a real, true, like their local community, the people around them.
So if there was a teacher that was not a football coach, that maybe was a little bit effeminate, or maybe happened to be gay, they would be no less potentially an effective faculty support for a Gay Straight Alliance, but
a stereotype example, if there was like drama teacher,
right,
you might not if there was a questionably, like, it doesn't matter what their sexuality is, right? But if there's a drama teacher, there's a stronger stereotypical connotation there, and it would do less work sort of in terms of community perception potentially, because the drama teacher does the GSA. It's different if it's the sort of football coach, because you're blending sort of what is normally the popular kids, the thing that is usually seen as like very like masculine in a traditional North American way,
and so even in the 90s, I think it would have been a surprise to a lot of people for, again, football coach. I think he's straight. I don't know, but it would have helped.
He has a wife and kids, so he's at least attracted to women. As a starting point.
So what that does is a lot, like, because we've been watching Modern Family lately, right? What a lot of what that does is it normalizes things. It makes it less threatening to be able to support these people in your community and make them less like others than it is to make them just like, hey, these are just people.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff. He introduced school lunch program in his state, which is, I think, a good thing. There's stuff that I think is good just broadly about him, and then there's stuff that I think is useful specifically as an opponent to Republicans. So one of the things is he's a hunter, right? So there's pictures of him posing with his dog and his rifles, right? Which I think makes it more challenging to have this narrative that he's going to try to take your guns away. Right. He has implemented like background checks for weapons, I think, in his state, or strengthened it or whatever. Right. But the narrative of, this guy is like a West Coast, like he's a coastal elite who hates guns. He's from Minnesota. And he hunts. He's just kind of like a dude. And I'm seeing a lot of little stories about him. And, this ties into what we talked about last week in terms of propaganda, right? Because these stories are propaganda, right? In the literal sense. They want you to feel good about the guy. They're about his personality or his character, his kind of, like, could I grab a beer with him? Would I like to hang out with him? Whatever. And they are meant to make you feel positive associations when you think about him. So, it's important to note that when I'm seeing these stories, these are explicitly propaganda used in a neutral sense, right? Because it can be good, it can be bad, it can be whatever. It just is. That is what it is. But from all the propaganda I'm reading, it's really making me like this guy. It's doing...
The propaganda's working.
Yeah, it's working. And whether it's working because he's a cool, likable guy, or at least cool enough and likable enough for on a politician standard, or it's just all, like, one of the stories that people are telling about him is when he was a teacher, his fellow teachers, his colleagues, play a little prank on him. Because he was like moving to the town for the first time. So they gave him a fake coupon for a free turkey because it was around Thanksgiving. They printed one out and gave it to him. And they said that he could redeem it at the local grocery store. And the teacher said that he walked in and he walked out and they had given him the free turkey. And they don't know how he did it or what ended up happening there, but he somehow presented the fake ticket and received a free turkey and walked out, and you're just like, oh, thanks, guys, in like a way that made it seem like maybe he didn't know like the situation, and that's just him for you. So it makes him seem kind, warm, take it in stride, but effective, strangely effective, right? Yeah. And so obviously the parallel between how good he could be politically, and another story about him that I saw was that apparently when he got his first position in politics, I don't know if that was straight as governor or whatever it was, that he was in like the Congress, and they were doing this orientation or whatever after the election cycle, and they're saying, I know for a lot of you guys this role will be a pay cut, and he was coming from being a teacher, and he leaned over to his aide or whoever and said, this is 4 times the amount I've ever been paid in my life. So he was in a room full of business people and rich people, affluent people, and he was coming from like a working class role as a teacher, being probably underpaid, but so in a room where most people were taking a pay cut, he was getting this massive pay bump to work in politics. And so there's a lot of little things about him that I'm hearing, and he's also apparently the guy who deployed the like Republicans are weird phrasing first. So lots of stuff, little stuff about him that for one reason or another, ultimately, I'm going to judge him based off of the actions that he takes in his policy. But as an initial thing, what I want, right? Ideally, for me, I think the best outcome... Speaking as a Canadian who's not going to vote in the election. The best outcome seems to be a Democrat victory this election, relatively speaking, right? So regardless of everything else, I think regardless of how I ultimately end up feeling about the guy, him seeming approachable and nice, electable, effective, right? And also in some ways... inured or immune to some criticisms that Republicans might have against him, is a good thing. Even if I end up not liking the guy, not liking the policy, not liking what he does, right? And another thing I saw was one of the initial Trump emails or the Republican emails about him. And one of the things that they're trying to ding him for is that he said that rural America was mostly cows and rocks, which... I think they're trying to make it say that, like, oh, he doesn't, like, respect, like, rural America or whatever. But when I hear that, it sounds folksy, it sounds funny, and it sounds, like, clearly, like, hyperbole in a way that doesn't make me think, oh, people there. Because I've done a road trip where I was in rural Canada, and it was, like, mostly, like, cows and fields and, like, having been to a lot of, like, driven around a lot of, like, North, like Canada, right? Which is not exactly the same as America, but I think in the rural parts, it's, partially representative.
There's similarities. I mean, we are in the same sort of, it's North America. The border, I think, is a little bit artificial in certain places.
If I were to say that rural Canada is mostly cows and rocks, I think that kind of is just funny as a statement. It's one of those things that I don't even really feel like he needs to be defended from, or I don't do so, well, he was saying it out of context and it was casual and it was whatever. I hear that and I just go, that's fine.
That's funny.
It's funny. It's like, it's a little folksy. It's a little charming.
Not all wrong.
And then he turns around and he gives, I don't know the chronology of this obviously, but he's working on like a school lunch program for kids. So he's not saying it's cows and rocks and so I think we should ignore them entirely. It's cows and rocks. Mostly cows and rocks because it is. And then also there are people here and the people here are worth like taking care of, right? It just the things that they're coming after him for thus far feel so insubstantial that in some sense it makes me hopeful from the sense of like if your attacks against him are going to be ineffective, I think that's actually one of like that's a great thing. And I saw somebody comment saying based off of his platform, like if you are if undecideds or independents aren't willing to vote for them, then they're not like really independent. They actually do know like their political leanings. It's just, he's a very sort of middle of the road kind of guy. Anyway, so it's interesting. We'll see how it's going. And then do we want to talk about Cameron's comment or is this too much politics talk? So do we want to get into...
the one thing I want to, short compared to that, is that the weirdest criticism that I've heard of Kamala Harris. I want to try to get it right, but I can never remember. In my mind, there's two different ways to say it.
I think it's Kamala, but I'm not 100% sure.
Kamala. Okay. Yeah, emphasis on accent on the first syllable. Okay. Is that people have called her a DEI hire, and that's short, I think, for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yep.
And so it's the weirdest criticism because it is literally a popularity contest. When she was chosen to be VP, the way you decide whether you want her or not is by voting. It's a popularity contest. Mm-hmm. So it's not actually getting hired for a job. It's getting voted in because people would prefer you over the alternative.
I think people are talking about her past career maybe, but it's one of those things.
It doesn't even matter. Like at this point, you could have no career and still, you're on the, I mean, again, look at what career is there for the alternatives.
Yeah.
Real estate mogul, racism. Wasn't there the rental stuff about like how as a landlord there was a lot of...
You're talking about Trump?
Yeah.
I'm not sure specifically what you're referring to. But
and then there was the bankruptcies.
Yeah.
And then the affairs and the... I don't know. It was just... If we're talking about the record, at some point it really doesn't matter. People are voting for the person that's in front of you.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, you're talking about just when you're discrediting things that people have done. And I think calling somebody a DEI hire is one of those things which I feel like it just on its face feels a little strange, because I think if I'm thinking about people who kind of coast along and don't put any work in and don't deserve the things that are handed to them, I think like nepotism is so much more clearly like a concrete thing that I see more often and that I can see the clear line for. Yeah. And if we talk about nepotism, think about the Trump White House and all of the Trumps in the White House, right? Think about all those roles within that. And
I mean, then it comes back to even something more fundamental, like when you talk about, I mean, there's less of this in Canada, I think, but it's legacies at the Ivy League
schools.
Like that to me is very much the same sort of thing. Mm-hmm. It's all part and parcel. Yeah, it's direct. I mean, but when you talk about all the different Trumps and the Kushner and how, I don't know, it's wild. It's wild to me, like how there's just, it feels like there's a real lack of insight when they criticize other people. I mean, people say this, right? That it's basically calling themselves, they criticize other people for made up failings that they are sort of declaring that, hey, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think we should make it explicit and not just implied that the term DEI hire and the way that it's used to weaponize against people is it's racist.
Oh yeah.
And it's a way of discrediting anybody who is a minority. So if you're not a white guy, that means that you didn't deserve it, right?
Yeah.
Because what makes somebody a DEI hire if they are a gender minority, like a trans person, if they are like a attraction, like their attraction, their gender identity, sexual orientation, or their race, right? So all the things that would make you a DEI hire is just being a minority,
right.
Which explicitly is just saying if you aren't a white guy, you might not have actually earned it.
Right.
Yeah.
When in fact, a lot of times it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Like when you're talking about people who actually make their way, to get into those old, is it white boys? Not white boys. Old boys. Old boys club. That's it. Yeah. I was thinking white, but then sound
white
right.
Boys club.
This is not right.
White boys club sounds like a rap outfit from like the 90s.
Yeah. So, I mean, if anything, it's probably that's more of that than when you're talking about the opposite, right? Like there's a lot of exclusivity there. Anyways, all right. So I'm getting a little incoherent here. I think I need to get back to Injustice. Where I'm
so this comment comes from the Man of the Hour 6632, and they say, "Do you guys think that Arkham Knight Batman should be put in the challenge cycle because he is the only Arkham character that never got a challenge other than Arkham Origins Batman and Arkham Knight Harley Quinn? Would this bring back interest to veteran players?"
I mean, the short answer to the question is not enough, and the longer answer is that so there's not enough people. If you took everybody who used to be interested in it, there's still probably not enough income there. If you brought it up to the previous levels, they're not making money off it.
And you'd also need to have them get in contact with all the people. You need to, to bring somebody back, they need to know what's going on in the first place. So they can't be all the way gone. They have to still be participating in the community in some capacity.
And I will point out, saying that Arkham Knight Batman is a character that never got a challenge other than two other characters, then what you're talking about is a significant portion. I mean, I can't remember how many Arkham characters there are, but that's more than 10% of the characters that have never been challenges.
That's
right?
true.
So it's not actually that small a number that he's not so exceptional that you almost have to include him. That's not the case at all.
Yeah.
Now, Arkham Origins Batman, you can buy in the store for credits. Arkham Harley Quinn is a little different because she was originally a chase character in the gold packs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could make a case. I would love to have access to everybody. I mean, even though we have a complete collection, I think anything that would make people happy about the game is good. It's still a great game even without it. And I think Arkham Knight Batman gets held up to a relatively high pedestal, partly because he's good and versatile, partly because he's not easily available. But I think there are better teams that don't have Arkham Knight Batman in it.
Yeah.
I don't think he's all that. He's great. Don't get me wrong. He is versatile in a way that no other characters are with the Wayne Tech boost. And there's that really fun sort of glitch where you could get 3 tech boosts instead of 2, which I love exploiting. But, yeah, I mean, he's not only not the greatest, it wouldn't even be, I don't think it would move the needle very much if he was available. I don't think, if anything, it would do the opposite. If Arkham Knight Batman were easily available, they would be, any interest they generated would be more than offset by the amount of income they lost, because nobody's interested in buying that first pack, so they can start getting him in nth metal packs.
Yeah. Interesting point. Okay. Our next comment and last one for this week will be from Cameron1072, and they say, I had heard about the racially biased prosecutions in California ages ago, but didn't know about Harris's involvement until much later. She definitely wasn't the only one involved, though, and it is a system problem more than anything. I would still 100% vote for Harris over Trump, but I still prefer other candidates in the Democratic Party over both. And if the Democratic primaries were held today, I don't believe Harris would win. At this point, though, I really hope she does become president, but she wouldn't have been my first pick. As for the Trump thing, I don't mean to sound so defeatist, but I can't help but be worried. The whole thing just reminds me too much of Palpatine from the prequels, lol. The Jedi tried to kill him, which he used for sympathy to declare himself emperor, and Trump is already telling people that they'll never have to vote again. Life really does imitate art.
I do want to point out that I think he's lost a lot of sympathy when he started claiming that his ear grew back. I mean, it's not. I mean...
Yeah, it's one of those, it's not over until it's over things. I think definitely... worry and concern. I mean, it's just been that cycle. I think it's very hard to escape it, right? Like in Canadian politics, there's concern over all the decisions that Justin is making. And then there is a secondary concern that he's going to make enough bad decisions that he's going to alienate enough people that he's going to lose to the conservatives, right?
I think that's inevitable at some point. I mean, I would prefer that
Pierre
Poilievre?
I think you swallow the R and the E because it's a French name.
Pierre Poilievre. I think he would be awful. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of any of the policies or sort of the pseudo policies or the principles that he seems to stand for ideologically. But I think it's too late. I think the Liberals have been in power long enough that enough people are tired of...
You think now? Like now is too late?
Yeah, now is too late. So even if they've swapped out... I mean, like, I think... Did I mention this with just you, or did I mention this on our channel? Is that Canada has a much bigger history of prime ministers who've been in power long enough to become unpopular and then stepping down. On the channel, Okay, and it's never worked out. It's never, doesn't matter what party it is, you can't move out quick enough and you can't generate enough interest in the new person that they have a chance of winning. It's just never happened, hasn't even been close.
Yeah. And so I think being worried is a good feeling, actually. I think the interesting thing is, I think defeatist versus worried. Worried is obviously a negative emotion to have, but I think worry, especially political worry, is good in as far as it is useful, right? I think it's one of those things where there's sort of like an ideal amount, right? Which is the amount that you can use and transmute and turn into something in the same way that like spite can be great as a motivator to do stuff, right? That people don't think you're good enough for. Worry I think is a good emotion to hold on to. And then as soon as it swaps into sort of feeling defeated or feeling like it's already over is when it stops being able to be useful, right, to you. And not to say that it's like totally like one or the other. I think you can feel a little defeatist and not let that impact your behavior, right? Use the worry,
right?
Sort of push down that defeatist mentality. But it's, it is interesting, right? Because I think the other thing too is that there's so much of it is the narrative and the framing, right? Because we ultimately know how we feel and how new information makes us feel, right? Like the new candidates. But we, on the internet, we are so much in echo chambers, right? The way that our feed is curated and the information that we have available to us and the people around us, we're getting such a narrow slice of sort of information compared to what is necessary to actually like really understand what outcomes are going to be, even if you have like a strong feeling or sense. And even if you do have, you know, like a lot of information, it's never enough, right?
Right.
Which is the whole reason why like Nate Silver in like 538, why he got so popular and he got so much resources and clout, right, put behind him was because of the accuracy of his predictions, sort of separate from his beliefs or whatever.
Right, because he was looking at signals in different areas and weighting them in a way so that it was less about just listening to one person or your gut and saying, okay, so given what difference each of these other signals are,
just being right, and being right in a specific way is worth so much, right? In terms of like punditry and
it's a shame Nate Silver doesn't seem like he's that smart. Like other than this one trick, there's the way the commentary.
Well, I know that some of his beliefs seem a little weird to me. I don't know about smart or not smart. I've talked before about how I sometimes or most of the time think that it's like it feels like a less useful like metric for me.
Okay, so maybe I shouldn't say smart. It's more just that there's certain logical inconsistencies in what he says. Again, outside from this one area where he's clearly very good.
Yeah. But yeah. So regardless, you know, each individual thing, I think that assassination attempt definitely gave Trump momentum, right? There was some resources and some political value to it, right? In sort of maybe like an overly cold, like overly analytical way of putting it, was that there was some amount of political utility to the assassination attempt for Trump, right?
Right.
And there was some cost to the Democrats in terms of how hard they could come after him, right? The perception of their messaging in the wake of the assassination attempt, right? But also, I think, you know, with the VP pick and all this other stuff, there's new opportunities and there's a lot of just time alone with the same information and new things. There's a lot of ways for things to shift in subtle and large ways. And
I think I've said this before. Mark Evanier is a comic book writer that I follow. And he says about each election, sure, you ask far enough out, there's no right answer. There's things that happen that you never could have expected that happen almost right up until the end. Who could have known that there would be this whole thing about in the election where Obama was the first election where he's the Democratic candidate, I think a year out, he wasn't even on anybody's radar. Like stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And we're getting closer, so I think we have a bit more insight, but clearly we can also see from, you know, the Clinton-Trump election that stuff happens.
It's true.
Right at the end.
Yeah. So I am hopeful but reserved. You know, I think in a lot of ways I sort of share Cameron's overall stance of like, you know, they're not these people aren't necessarily my first pick, right? It's not that I'm super gung-ho about one and really, you know, frothing angry at the prospect of the other, right? It's not like some decisive, big, huge, like the ultimate win, right? For a Democrat party. Especially for the fact that at the end of the day, also, we have said it before, we'll say it again, we don't live in the States, right?
Sure.
We're looking at sort of more the second order impact of it in the same way that like any foreign election would have some amount of impact on us to differing extents.
Especially neighbors so close.
Yeah.
Even if they don't use the Canadian dollar.
It's true. Yeah, you think if we get the right dam in that they'll swap over to making Canadian dollars the sort of worldwide standard? I don't even think they could do that if they wanted to.
One can always hope.
I don't even think the U.S. can make that choice. I think it's other people who are making that choice.
That's right, they cannot.
Yeah.
But one can hope.
Yeah. Anyways, I think that's an all right place to end it off for the week. So to finish up, we'd like to give a huge thank you to all of our lovely patrons on Patreon who, who embolden us to talk about whatever we want. We would do it anyways, but the fact that people give us money, despite the fact that we do it, makes us feel like we're doing something right, maybe.
Yeah.
But so we'd like to give a huge thank you to
Michael Devries, Irvin Ruiz, Hoshi 127, Nora Klimek, and Paolo-Cesar-Pablo-Juan, who are supporting us on the credited level, and 5x5, who's supporting us on the gratitude level.
Yeah. We'd also like to give a huge thank you to all of you for, watching, engaging. Thank you if you gave us comments that we talked about this week, or I guess any week, really.
Any week.
Yeah. And we'll see you next time.
Komoda.